Did you know that Christian Horner, after being fired with a multi-million-dollar severity package, could return to Formula One to challenge the very team that fired him? What seemed like the end of a golden era at Red Bull could turn into the biggest threat the team has faced in years. Before continuing, let me know your opinion in the comments. Do you think Horner will get revenge on Red Bull from another team? What's really behind this move that could completely change the future of Formula One? Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In this video, we'll break down everything that's happening after Christian Horner's official dismissal from Red Bull, the multi-million-dollar severity package he received, and how his secretive moves could mean real revenge against the team he helped build. To understand what's happening, we must go back to the last few months at Red Bull, a period marked by internal tensions, unexpected results, and decisions made in silence. For almost 2 decades, Christian Horner was the face of a team's successes, the architect of a project that grew from a fledgling team to a dynasty that dominated Formula One. However, that leadership, which seemed unshakable, eroded over time, especially after the loss of the 2024 Constructors' Championship to McLaren, a blow that no one at the top expected. The turning point came after the British Grand Prix, when the board, in a secret meeting away from the spotlight, decided to terminate Horner's contract. This decision wasn't made overnight, but was carefully planned weeks in advance, after observing that the team's performance hadn't recovered to the expected level. For Red Bull's owners, the Uvidhia brothers and Mateschitz, keeping Horner posed a greater risk than the shock of his dismissal. Thus, on July 9, 2025, a move was consummated that few dared to foresee, executed with the coldness of a business move. The most shocking aspect is that Red Bull not only dismissed its longtime director, but also had to face the financial burden of severity pay that ranged between $80 and $110 million, a record figure for a dismissal in Formula One. This agreement reflected the remaining years of Horner's contract until 2030 and the complex non-compete clauses that protected his position. In financial terms, it was a severe blow to the team's structure, but necessary, according to management, to open a new chapter. That is the real starting point, a historical dismissal that, more than a closure, seems to have opened a deep wound within Red Bull. What initially seemed like an administrative adjustment ended up revealing the fragility of the project and showing that even the most solid dynasties in Formula One can fail at any moment. Christian Horner's dismissal was not a simple corporate formality, but an operation designed with surgical precision. According to leaks in German and British media, the dismissal was carried out without warning at a luxury hotel in London. There, in an atmosphere charged with tension and secrecy, Oliver Mintzlaff and Helmut Marko met with Horner to inform him of the final decision. Everything had been planned weeks in advance, ever since the Red Bull owners met privately during the Austrian Grand Prix to signal what would be the end of an era. The strategy was clear: to carry out the dismissal as discreetly as possible, avoiding leaks that could upset the paddock or give the competition an advantage. But while Red Bull's top brass was preparing for this quiet exit, Horner was already making his moves. Subsequent leaks revealed that he had held secret meetings in London with Flavio Briatore and representatives from Alpine, even before his dismissal was made official. These meetings, far from being casual, are being interpreted as a strategic maneuver to secure his future in Formula One. While publicly still serving as director of Red Bull, privately he was already beginning to plot the next chapter of his career. These rumors spread rapidly in the paddock and had an immediate effect: the perception that Horner wasn't finished, but rather was preparing a comeback under conditions that could put Red Bull in jeopardy. The combination of a surprise dismissal and leaks about his conversations with Alpine fueled the narrative of possible revenge, a scenario that both the press and fans began to intensely debate. This mix of secrecy surrounding the dismissal and calculated leaks simultaneously turned Horner's departure into an off-track spectacle. What seemed like a simple administrative transition morphed into a medium earthquake, with every detail fueling new theories about its plans. Following the official announcement, Red Bull's public stance was carefully calculated. Oliver Mintzlaff issued a statement that sounded more like a tribute than a contentious farewell. He thanked Horner for his 20 years of service, highlighted his commitment and innovative vision, and positioned him as the great architect of the successes that placed the team at the top of Formula One. This message sought to send a signal of stability to partners, sponsors, and fans, masking the internal tensions that had erupted in the weeks prior. It was an attempt to protect the team's image, portraying an orderly closure when, in reality, Horner's departure had been an abrupt and bitter break. At the same time, Horner also adopted a tone that appeared calm and professional. In his farewell, he emotionally recalled the journey since 2005, the championships won, the people who supported him, and the legacy he left behind in the history of the sport. This speech, although emotional, conveyed an implicit message. Horner was leaving with pride, but without giving up, suggesting he still had much to contribute to Formula One. For many in the paddock, his words didn't sound like a definitive closure, but rather a warning that he would return stronger in another project. Behind the diplomacy of both statements lay the real rift. Helmut Marko, without the same prudence, took it upon himself to lay out the real reasons for the dismissal in statements to the German press. According to him, the decline in performance, the controversial decision to extend Sergio Perez's contract, and above all, the tensions with the Verstappen family had deteriorated the relationship to the point of no return. Red Bull, after losing the Constructors' Championship to McLaren in 2024 and seeing Verstappen's dominance in 2025 compromised, needed radical change, and Horner had become a symbol of problems rather than solutions. So, while Red Bull sought to close ranks and show firmness, Horner maintained a strategic position. He publicly accepted his departure with grace, but had already begun to move his pieces privately. This duality between what was being said officially and what was leaking in the paddock corridors kept everyone's attention focused on the same point: Horner's immediate future. The first major consequence of Horner's dismissal was the financial blow to Red Bull. The severity pay, which ranged between $80 and $110 million, became a topic of debate not only within the paddock but also in business circles. A payment of that magnitude reflected Horner's enormous contractual weight and, at the same time, made it clear that management was willing to assume a historic cost to part ways with him. For Red Bull, it was an expense that weakened their accounts, but one they considered necessary to begin a new era. However, the most worrying effect was not on the team's finances, but on the team's perception. The departure of Horner, the man who had built the structure that took Red Bull to the top from scratch, generated immediate uncertainty among sponsors and the team itself. Many began to wonder if the team could maintain the same level of stability and success without the figure who had been the cornerstone of their project. That doubt opened a gap that the competition was quick to exploit. At the same time, leaks about Horner's secret meetings with Alpine further stirred the atmosphere. The possibility of him joining the French team in 2026, just as the team was set to adopt Mercedes engines, set off alarm bells within Red Bull. The idea of having their former team principal leading a rival with privileged information about the team's internal structure was seen as a direct threat. It was like handing an opponent the complete map of their strengths and weaknesses. This situation transformed what initially seemed like an inevitable dismissal into a much greater strategic risk. Horner's silent revenge, in the form of a possible return to Alpine, immediately became a specter that began to haunt everyone at Red Bull. Every rumor, every leak, and every public statement only increased the tension and reinforced the narrative that this chapter was not over, but only just beginning to be written. Looking ahead, everything indicates that Christian Horner has no intention of remaining on the sidelines of the Formula One world. Leaks about his talks with Alpine point to a clear path. His return won't be immediate, but it will be strategic and could coincide with the new regulatory era that comes into effect in 2026. In that scenario, Alpine would benefit not only from Mercedes engines, but also from the knowledge and experience of a man who has already demonstrated how to transform a team into a world champion. For Red Bull, this move isn't a simple change of direction, but rather the possibility of its former leader becoming a direct rival with more than dangerous weapons. The expectation in the paddock is that Horner will use the coming months to move cautiously, allowing the media buzz surrounding his dismissal to cool while he strengthens his ties with Alpine. The French, in need of a solid project to pull them out of stagnation, would see in him the ideal figure to lead a rebirth. If this link is confirmed, the effect would be immediate. Alpine would go from being a supporting player to becoming a serious contender in the battle for the championship. In short, what began as a surprise dismissal ended up becoming an earthquake that shook not only Red Bull, but the entire Formula One world. Christian Horner's departure, accompanied by an unprecedented multi-million-dollar severity package, made it clear that the power he accumulated over 2 decades doesn't disappear overnight. On the contrary, that force seems to have found a new path, one that could be directed directly against the very team that is yours. The immediate effect is already evident: a weakened Red Bull image, a paddock hanging on every rumor, and a Horner who, far from remaining silent, is beginning to be seen as a latent threat. His potential alliance with Alpine isn't just a passing rumor, but the piece that could change the grid's makeup starting in 2026. And the most disturbing thing is that he has enough inside knowledge to turn this alliance into a true strategic coup against his former employers. Now the inevitable question is, will Christian Horner be able to turn his dismissal into the most spectacular revenge in Formula One history? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.